Um, so tonight we're working on drawing hands and feet, and I know, and I'm so glad that y'all sent me messages about what you wanted to learn because this is actually a really challenging topic for a lot of people to cover, a lot of artists to cover, drawing hands and feet. Um, when I first started drawing hands, I think I was just intimidated with all the lines and the shapes, and because these are really mobile parts of our body. So I'm going to give you, hopefully, what is kind of like a beginner's guide to drawing hands. But the one thing I can say is practice a lot. If you really want to draw hands and feet, draw your feet, draw your friend's feet, draw feet around you, and hands too. Practice a lot. So again, Haley from home, I hope that y'all are all healthy and well, and let's go ahead and get started. What you're going to need in front of you is a piece of paper, and I would actually grab 2 pieces of paper. So I have 2, these were my demos I've already drawn, but we're going to basically do something like that. 2 pieces of paper, and have a reference photo if you can. If you don't have one, take one really quickly. If you really don't have access to another digital surface, then you can use your hand, but it just has to be still. So maybe you lay it on a table or something. Same with your foot. You can draw from a different perspective. And tonight I want you to focus on drawing lightly, but because of the lighting in my house and everything, I'm going to draw firmly, but I want you to draw lightly. So with your piece of paper, whatever pencil you're using, we're not going to do pen tonight unless you want to practice a lot of gestural line work. We're going to split the paper up again into 4 quadrants. And I did that for you tonight because I don't know how big your paper is, but I'm going to show you, I'm going to do 2 hands, and I just don't want you to be intimidated with filling up a hand on a big piece of paper right now. So break up your paper into 4 segments, and maybe tonight you only have 1 picture of a hand, but you can go back and practice a couple. So we're going to do hands right now. Now, if you took my Draw Your Pet tutorial, I focused on overall shape, then seeing the detailed shapes, and then using the negative space. And that is something I carry with me in everything that I draw. So I'm using this hand. Can you see this, babe? That's my hand. I did just take that like an hour ago. And so I'm bringing the image right next to where I'm going to transfer it. I'm going to start in this quadrant. And it pretty much takes up most of the composition. So just go for the big shape. So I see the wrist here. And again, I'm going to try hard. I don't like to draw hard, but I'm going to do that for y'all. I see the wrist here. Look, I'm literally just drawing the big shape. Now this is what, when you're drawing a figure or a hand, you don't want to end up with leaf hands. That was something that I always did, was a leaf hand. And you don't want to do that because the fingers are so interesting. There's so much movement in these fingers. So you're drawing the overall shape. So just capture the shape, see where the lines go, the angle from the thumb to the pointer finger. So the pointer finger is a little bit higher. From the pointer to the middle, from the middle to the ring, and then the ring to the pinky, and then there's kind of this straight line here. So again, I'm drawing my hand. I don't know what pose you chose for your hand. So I know that in this shape, every single finger has to fit. Every single finger has to fit. So let's use the natural lines in the hands to then add smaller shapes, more detailed shapes. We're using lines to help us create this hand within this space. So I see the wrist line here. I see some lines here for the thumb. I see more lines here. I see another long line here. These are, when you get your palm read. I don't know if y'all have ever gotten your palm read, but these lines are really important for a lot of reasons, but also for drawing. They're helpful. They help us map it out. So once you have these internal kind of motion-filled lines, let's go ahead and start drawing extension lines of where the fingers actually are. So I see that the thumb bone here, the thumb top here. I see the knuckles are right here in this section. The ring finger kind of goes like this. I know this is really messy, but this is how you can capture a hand. And then what I'm teaching you tonight, okay, I have to use my pencil sharpener. What I'm teaching you tonight is capturing the hand, and then when you have more time, go back and add more detail. Go back and refine lines. Go back and erase some of these lines you don't want. Think about negative space. We've drawn basically the middle part of all of these fingers, okay? Think about negative space. So if I have my knuckles here, I see a wave here, it ends. This line comes out a little bit. We're starting to add a little more story, a little more, we're fleshing out these lines, right? So we did the big shape overall, which is where we have to fit this whole hand. We did the natural motion, which is going to help us kind of spread out into the space that we've created. And now we're creating extension lines. Like this is where actually the fingers are going. They're kind of almost like the bones. There's a little negative space. That's really important when you're spacing out the gesture of the hand. You want to think about this negative space or the space in between every finger. So with my thumb, I have my knuckle here, and the top, and every single part of the finger matters. The way the top of the finger moves. It's not a point, it's not flat, it has a curve. That's more for my thumb at least. You have to think about how your thumb looks different. Also, one of my favorite artists, and I think I've told y'all this before, is Egon Schiele. I learned how to draw hands through practice, but also I started watching his line motion, and y'all know I love lines. And I fell in love with how he kind of made hand drawing look a little easier. He kind of chunked up the hand into sections. So think about these as sections. Okay, we're still within this kind of leaf that we've created. I see a line that comes out like this. We're still making those motion lines, and then negative space. There's a little negative space here in between the two fingers. Where this starts to move down, there's some negative space. And there's a little bit larger of a space in between the pinky and the ring finger. Here's where I think some people get tripped up on the hands, is just think about them as sections, like little Vienna sausages. You have the base knuckle, the middle part of the finger, and the tip of the finger. 3 sections. So each section has its own shape. This moves out wide, and then you have the knuckle like an oval. This moves in a line, and then it's rounded. So just move the image over. There's Jean-Pierre by shapes. So I'm going to draw the knuckle here. Also, it's hard for me to, usually I don't have a problem drawing and talking. For some reason, and no, it's not just because of Jean-Pierre, it's hard for me to draw hands because they are really detailed. It's hard for me to draw hands and talk, but I'm doing my best. So again, we're doing the extension of the lines. And again, this is, I would not normally press down this hard, but I'm just putting in lines. I'm putting in where these shapes, major shapes, are going. You'll see and you'll start to realize that what really is important here are the little lines within the fingers. Those are showing you the way that the fingers are bending. When my fingers are pointing out, these knuckle lines are moving like a rainbow to my face. When these fingers are pointing in, they're like a smiley face. So lines really do matter here. This line is straight. This is like an oval. This is like a smiley face. This is a smiley face. This is a smiley face. And you can look up contour drawing, but that, not blind contour drawing, and you really emphasize the line. So this hand is not my favorite hand I've ever drawn because I really don't like pressing hard, but I'm gonna move on to another hand. So basically, you're just fleshing out. Once you get the main shape, and then you draw the moving lines, you're filling in that shape, draw the extension of the fingers, okay? And then start to go in and modify the lines you've already created. So I'm making this wrist a little bit more fleshed out. Thanks, babe. Michael grabbed Jean-Pierre and is holding him because he's upset for some reason. So, and then just go back over. So it takes you really fleshing out the fingers here. Negative space. I see the middle finger goes a little wider. And remember, the lighter you draw, the more opportunity you have to really erase. When fingers come out at you, don't be intimidated by that perspective change. Just again, remember the shapes. Remember the shapes. That's really important here. Sections, overall shape, and all the shapes, and then the way in which the lines move. So that's kind of like a hand going like that. Let's move on to one more hand, I want to do this hand. So that's my hand going like this. And again, I want to look at the main shape. So if y'all just want to see, this was the demo of that first hand, and then just some sketches that I did. But these are gestural, so I keep these because it has everything I need, and then I can go back and create more refined and structured lines. So let's go into one more hand. So again, create the overall shape. So I see that this kind of comes up, we go here, and here. So I know that I have to get everything to fit in here. Pointer finger to middle, to the last three, to the wrist, here. All right. So this might go over 15 minutes, but that's okay. I can always post a few videos. All right, so let's start. We have the actual shape that this hand needs to fit in. So now we're going to go and add more basic shapes, all right? So I see the thumb is kind of here. There's a knuckle here. And let's do the extension of the fingers. Finger here, pointer finger. I see the middle finger, I see the ring finger, and the pinky finger. So they're cascading down, almost spiraling down. This probably doesn't go up that far out. And then I see the thumb is here. So we already have kind of the skeleton of the hand. We know where we're going. We know what lines we have to fill. So let's add some knuckles. Knuckles are really important. And also, if you're really serious about drawing hands, I would suggest looking at an anatomy book and knowing the bones, because if you know the bones, guessing becomes so much easier. Or if you just can't seem to get something right, maybe you look at the bones. I have some reference books and some bone books. If you are interested, you can DM me, and I will share that information with you. All right, so I see the thumb is here. Again, I'm just breaking it down into segments. The knuckle, I know this is messy, y'all, but all right, so there's my thumb, right? That's my thumb. This comes out, this cascades down. We still have this kind of, and I chose more unique hand poses. Also, I have an eraser tonight. Remember the lines, it's important. The finger doesn't flick up. The finger moves down when it's at this specific angle. So I erase that because I don't want the finger to be like lifted. It goes down. So I'm trying to make sure that this looks exactly how I see it. Sections of the finger, little Vienna sausages. All right. And think about negative space. So there's a V in between these two fingers, and this ring finger kind of projects out from what looks like the base of the middle finger. Think about the lines. All right. And then the last one is pinky, just barely hanging out from here. This one actually does kind of flick up where it rounds. So I know this is very quick, but it just takes practice. And don't be afraid to get messy. If you do end up drawing really hard, just consider it practice. My first drawings of fingers were never perfect. I think I told you I learned how to do this in 5th grade, but then I really studied shapes of the fingers with Egon Schiele. So that's a hand. When you have more time, you go and you add more details. So practice 2 more on your own time. I want to go into feet now, and I want to start with this foot. All right, so go to your next page, and let's dedicate this to our feet. And again, go ahead and draw 4 quadrants. Okay? So feet and hands. I know this is difficult. I know this is kind of overwhelming, but remember, overall shape, extensions of where the toes are, shapes, collect all the toes and move them into one big shape. And then add your modified lines, your more refined lines. I'm gonna move into this because I just drew it bigger. Okay, so I see 2 feet in this composition, which was, I guess I should have drawn this a little bit differently, but I see 2 feet in the composition. You know what, I'm gonna cheat and I'm gonna erase this line because I already had my little practice, so, all right, that bothers me. I have a brush for this stuff. My handy dandy architect brush. Okay, so I see 2 feet. So go for the shapes. There's a negative space in between these 2 feet. There's kind of a teardrop negative space here. There's a lot of negative space over here. There's some negative space here and here. There are my 2 feet. All I did was draw negative space. That's another technique if you're kind of overwhelmed with placing. Draw the negative space, because I know now that my feet have to fit in these 2 shapes. So we have this long line where my heel, and again, lines of the heels are important. This isn't a perfectly bubbled heel. This heel line comes down, and then it kind of moves a little bit flat before, you know what, I'm gonna probably extend out of this out of this little square that I did, but that's okay. I'm gonna try not to. And I'm grouping my toes together. They're all moving in this kind of pod headed towards the north, eat and never eat shredded wheat, northwest. So I'm gonna draw the base of my foot, the ball of my foot, these long lines here, and I love this part of the feet, this arch, this curve. So sometimes I exaggerate it, but see, I can already tell that my heel is like way too far out. But thankfully I had my negative space. So I'm drawing shapes. My toes are supposed to go in here. I see this arch isn't quite that exaggerated. I see one of my bones here, so I'm just gonna mark that. All right. Now, important for toes, I'm gonna zoom in. I know, and you know what's so funny too? It's very hard to find photos of feet on the internet that, in general, it was hard to find. So one of the photos is mine of my foot. This is not my foot. But there's also art books that have just pages of feet and hands. So you're not stalking feet on the internet. It was a very interesting 20 minutes. Okay, so now let's look at the toes. Toes are just shapes. Everything in your life is a shape. Everything you see, if you can see it that way. I'm gonna start with the big toe because it's the biggest toe. And I see it has this cute little lift. So I'm gonna get my detailed grasp of my pencil. Has a round and then a little flat line at the bottom, just like that. I see a line here, and I see all these little lines here. And then I'm going to follow the natural moving line of the second toe. We move down, we go a little flat, and then we flick under and go flat. So try not to guesstimate. This is not a toe. This can be a toe. That's more like a toe. Toes are pointing down. That same motion is, thank gosh, repeated for this next toe. Cascade down, a little flat, and a little flick and flat. Just like that. And in the same way that is repeated in this toe. Flat, flick. The one toe that's different, the two toes that are different, at least on my feet, are my pinky and my, I guess you could say my ring toe, my fourth toe. The pinky is a little more pointy, and there we go. What's important are the little lines in between the toes because it shows you the movement of the foot. Just like that. You want to see that this person is standing on her toes. So I'm going back and I'm refining these lines and showing that she's standing on her toes. And if your toes are a little too big or anything like that, now you have the general shape. And then toenails, I didn't mention that with fingernails. Toenails, be very careful. Try not to just judge where they are, because those can really, again, change the nature of the toe. If you see a lot of my work, sometimes I don't do toenails because they can be really distracting. And again, I'm expressive, so I allow myself for that. This is going to be my last foot. I do want to keep this relatively short. So I'm going to not do this next, well, I am going to do this next foot because that's no, I'm not going to do this foot. I'm going to do this foot because it's harder. I chose a harder foot. And so some of y'all might see this foot and you might be kind of freaking out because like, wow, that's not just a foot on the ground. That's a foot that is lifting and everything like that. If you can think about it in shapes, all that worry goes away. So let's think about it in shapes. I see the ankle here. So if you're looking at your bones, this bone is higher. I see a really, almost like a rectangle. I see a rectangle shape here. It's coming from the middle. I see a rectangle in the ball of the foot. I'm going to group these toes together, pretty flat. Group these toes together, the big toe here. I see that the ball of the foot comes up, this ankle bone, and that there's a flat line for the heel. So that's where that foot's going to go. But let's make it a little more interesting. I'm going to perfect my arch. This is not easy drawing, y'all. So I'm sure you're probably going to look at this video a few more times. I know I'm moving a little bit fast, but I'm hoping you get the general idea that one, you can do it, and two, it just takes a lot of practice. So these are my toes that I did a really good one over here, but I want to show you. I want to show you what that looks like. All right, so I see this part is really, remember, try not to just add in lines that you think go there. This line is really flat, the ball of the foot. I'm seeing toes. And sometimes I do little round shapes first, just so I get the motion. And then I go back and I add the little detail, the little angles of the toes. So here's my big toe. We come up here. We get a little flat. So that's not perfect, but I want to find the movement. All right. And then we have the projection of this toe. We go down. We have the projection of this toe. Notice the shapes. They're not perfect circles. They all have a flat edge. So there. This is not a perfect foot, but I'm going to make this line a little more narrow. So there. I'm going to go back and kind of refine some of these lines here. This ankle comes out just like that. This is the foot that I was actually really proud of. So this is a foot that's lifting. That is a strange angle, and see, looking back, I'd even do that to put your foot in. But remember, so hands and feet, I know that was a little over 15 minutes, but remember these key things, and I'm going to show you this. So these are some hands that I did tonight to practice. When you have your hand, if you're doing a full body or if you're drawing a friend or anything where there's hands and feet involved, first of all, look at the overall shape. So stay away from leaf hands as your final product, because you can do more. You can do more. All of these hands that I've drawn here have an overall outline of the shape that they're in the composition. Once you get the overall shape, flesh out where the bones go, the extension of the fingers. So these fingers go straight, some bend. You're just drawing the middle line. You're extending out, putting where you're going to be fleshing out these fingers. And then go into some of the lines. There's a curved line here. How are the fingers curving when they're bending versus when they're extended? Think about the tip of your finger. Does it go straight, a little curve, point down? Not all fingers are perfect. Not all fingers are perfect. And again, I know this is a lot, and just take time, just practice. Really, the way that I learned how to draw hands and feet was drawing hands and feet. So just practice. I know that's a lot. Does anybody have any questions about hands and feet? I can pick them up, babe. Does anybody have any questions about hands and feet or drawing or anything like that? No questions? Well, thank y'all so much. If you do have questions after this, please feel free to message me, but I want to see what you've done. So if you do end up drawing hands and feet, you can tag Haley from home, and I'd love to repost you and keep the community vibrant. So thank y'all so much for tuning in. I hope that you're healthy and well, and I look forward to seeing y'all. I'm going live on Saturday. I'll see you guys soon.